I know. How you doing this morning, Joe? Good. All right, we'd like to call to order our Louisiana Wildlife and Fishery Commission meeting of September the 7th. It's right at 9:35 right now, so we'll start off by leading with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Andy, you want to lead us with it, please? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, Miss Susan, roll call, please. Here.
Absent. Andy Brister. Here. Joe McPherson. Here. Gene Reynolds. Here. Kevin Sagrera. Here. Allison Sari. Here. Mr. Chairman, there are 6 commissioners in attendance. We have a quorum. Secretary Shadowin is also present.
All righty. Moving on, we need approval of our September the 7th agenda. We got a motion by Kevin, second by Gene. All in favor of the agenda, state and aye. Aye. All right, our agenda is approved. Next, we need an adoption of the August the 3rd commission meeting minutes. Got a motion by Mr. Joe, second by Al. All in favor, state and aye. Motion passes. Next, we're going to recognize and acknowledge awards. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Commission special announcements, personal privileges. We have Robert, our secretary, wants to speak.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Hey, Gene. Hello, everybody. Good morning. Between now and the next commission meeting on September 23rd at Waddell, Woodworth, Minden Bodcaw, and Monroe, these 4 venues will be hosting the National Hunting and Fishing Day. It'll be out here at Waddell, here in Baton Rouge. It is a day when lots of children come to see more and more about Sportsman's Paradise. There will be canoeing and fishing and archery. They can ride inflatables. It's just a really good day, and it'll be from 8 o'clock to 1 o'clock. So I believe there may be a home game that weekend, and we will be gone by the time kickoff is here. But I want to make y'all aware that it's happening around the state. So encourage folks that this is a time where they can come out and see just what all Louisiana has to do. One of the most popular events is when people bring out pelts and the children can kind of touch and pet those. So want to make you aware. Thank you. And that's all I have unless y'all have any questions.
Mr. Secretary,
Sir.
do you know which of those 4 locations consistently has the largest turnout?
Let me guess, Central Louisiana.
That's correct, Woodworth.
I kind of figured since you were up in that neck of the woods, that might be the answer. Yes, sir.
While you're at the mic, I was fixing to say that that Commissioner DeQueer didn't come this morning because he was so mad about trying to renew his license for the opening of the white wing season. But can you explain to us so we kind of have it out open what happened that people aren't able to renew their license except on their anniversary date or after?
Commissioner McPherson and Board of Commissioners, when we went to the 1-year license, apparently there was no input from our licensing. And by the time this came to our attention with the issues that were raised, we were unaware that the software had not been done. Now, the most recent report I got this morning, and I'm going to check with Undersecretary McClinton, I think we're supposed to have this rectified 2 months?
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks. Undersecretary McClinton can give y'all a little bit more information.
Yes, sir. We've reached out to our vendor and made them aware of it. The solution is going to be, it's going to allow the individual to buy a license at any time, and it's going to replace that license that they currently have and start that 365-day clock over. So there will be a warning if somebody is, it does it by accident. So there will be a warning letting you know, hey, you have an active license. This will replace that. So they have to click through that to make sure, because the fear that we have is we don't want people to buy one in error, but it'll allow you to pretty much buy a license at any time. So if you have an individual that has a basic they bought for this season and then didn't buy their duck till later or their deer till later, and they want to get that on the same 365-day cycle, they can always, purchase that all at one time and replace those other licenses. So that's going to be the solution. It's going to be about 6 to 8 weeks before it's going to be implemented.
With that pop-up, will it tell them when their license would renew?
Yes, sir. I believe so. We can make
believe
sure.
so.
If not,
I'm
if not, I
mentioning it
heard
so
you,
that
and we'll
you-
make sure it does, because they haven't started programming on it yet. They're finishing up. They should have the project they're currently working on this week complete, and they're going to start working on it next week.
Now, the secretary made the statement that licensing wasn't involved. How can you have a program developed for licensing and licensing not be involved in it? Isn't that under your shop, Mr. McClinton?
It is now, sir.
It was not when this was implemented. This was under the previous administration. And there was one guy working on this. And for whatever reason, it just didn't get passed by Brian's shop.
I was trying to pick on Brian, Mr. Secretary.
I know, I was trying to give him a little aid.
I have one question that I ran into, not with that particular complaint, but the other day, last weekend, I was trying to get an offshore permit to go red snapper fishing, and I had the worst luck in the world. It took me about an hour to get to that little permit, and I was like, you got to have a way to get this thing user-friendly better than this.
And fortunately, and I hate to look like I'm punting left and right, but that's that system is managed by fisheries as well. It's not part of the licensing system, and that was done intentionally. As I understand it, it's imperative that people have to kind of find that, to where whenever we do the survey, and I'll let Mr. Banks respond to this, that we have the best information on effort as possible. And so that should not take an hour, sir, but
Yeah, I have to check into that specific issue about it taking an hour. That sounds like a program and a system issue, but the purpose of you having to make a concerted effort to get that permit is so that we know when we survey that segment of the licensed population, that segment are our true anglers for that purpose.
Correct.
If you offer a free permit to just anybody and everybody that goes in to get a license, they're gonna say, oh, well, it's free. What's the harm in getting it? When in fact, a lot of those people have no intention of ever really prosecuting in that fishery. And so by making it very deliberative for you to go get that permit, we know that those are truly the people that are gonna be fishing for those species. And that's the purpose of it being so difficult. But in terms of it taking an hour to actually go through to get it, that sounds like a technology issue that I'm gonna have to talk to the staff about checking on. So I apologize for that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I thought it was mandatory to have it when you go offshore, right there. So, and when I did end up getting it, I don't even know what I done where it just popped up on the screen right there. I'm like, wow, what did I do? And so I
Well, it-
wanted to
it
bring
will-
that to y'all attention.
Well, thank you. It is mandatory for you to have it when you go offshore and for those species,
Correct.
to
Okay.
fish for those species. Thank you.
I had a similar issue trying to get my HIP certificate to go dove hunting, but I can assure you it was more operator than it was system. But I did call the number, just so y'all know, give it a shout out for whoever that was. And I did not wait long. And some young lady, got on the phone and walked me through it. And I got my HIP certificates or HIPAA, whatever it's called. So I could go dove hunting. And so I do, that automated system where I could call somebody really worked well and didn't wait very long.
Yes, sir. And that is the vendor. When you call that number, that's the vendor that's going to be doing these improvements. So that's the one that handled that. This ability to replace your existing license is only going to be the licenses that are 365. So your federal duck stamp and your HIP that, have a certain time that federally they end and begin, those are going to continue on that cycle. You won't be able to, those have sort of a cycle. It's all the ones that are just 365.
One comment. On the offshore landing permit piece, the two things that I noticed, because ran into this issue this summer with some friends, it doesn't seem to facilitate well the lifetime license, because it looks like when you log in for the ROLP, they're trying to tie it to an email address or something else, but it looks like if maybe there's a more permanent identification structure, social security number, something. I know date of births are so common, but some of these folks had lifetime licenses for 20, 30 years now, and they were asking for an email address, and he was like, I don't know what email address I had when I got this. So I think part of the issue that they ran into was the inputs to even getting to the ROLP weren't necessarily available. So they ended up just purchasing a 3-day license and then got to the ROLP that way. But if you can,
Yep, we
as
will
you're
definitely
looking
check
at it.
on that. Thanks for that feedback.
Yeah, and same thing on the renewal for the other ones, for the annual renewal. Now that we moved to this new one, same scenario. It's asking for email addresses, and people change email addresses like they
Right.
get haircuts these
Right.
days. Except for me, I don't get them too often.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
Any other questions? Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Anybody else in public? No. All right, moving on. Recognize and acknowledge award received by Corporal Josh Harris for Migratory Bird Game Enforcement, Major Rick Owens, Enforcement Division.
Good morning, Commissioners. On behalf of Secretary Shadwin and Colonel Zecchinelli, I'm again honored to be able to represent the Enforcement Division this year by recognizing our 2022-2023 Waterfowl Officer of the Year. As mentioned, this year's recipient is Corporal Josh Harris. He was our Louisiana recipient. In addition to that, Corporal Harris this year is also the National Waterfowl Officer of the Year. And by national, I mean with the Mississippi Flyway Council. That's a collection of 13 states, 3 Canadian provinces, parts of Mexico, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So it's a very competitive process. Some of the very best enforcement agents in the entire country are put up for this award. And so we're very honored this year to recognize Corporal Harris. A few of his achievements this past year for the season. Corporal Harris had 225 citations, but 73 of those were primary waterfowl citations. He additionally had 3 DWIs and 9 litter investigations. So it was a very well-balanced case production for the year, but 73 primary waterfowl citations is a very large accomplishment in the world of waterfowl enforcement for the 60 to 90-day season that's available. One thing about the award doesn't just recognize enforcement activity, but it's a balance of other functions throughout the year. Corporal Harris has recently moved into the position of our lead waterfowl instructor. And so as that, he is coordinating a group of waterfowl trainers, a group of 5 guys that are dedicated to waterfowl enforcement. They're all training. He teaches at our academy, as well as conducting an annual recertification, not recertification, but a refresher PowerPoint presentation for all waterfowl agents to keep them up to speed every year with updated laws, rules, and processes. On top of that, he was very instrumental with assisting me and the rest of the Enforcement Division with an outreach program this past year related to our new guide license. The guide license was new. We had a lot of questions, a lot of confusion, and we did an outreach program specifically in North Louisiana, but anybody else that we could get to go meet with guys specifically hands-on, landowners, hand walk them through the process, explain the concepts of the new license, what was involved, how they would go through the process of getting their licenses. It was a very popular process that we did, and we feel like we helped a lot of people. So with that said, this year's 2022-2023 Waterfowl Officer of the Year, Corporal Josh Harris.
Thank you, Corporal Harris. Their job well appreciated. Next, we have our enforcement report, and Major Dean O'Quinn's gonna give us that report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commission. For August of 2023, Wildlife Fisheries reported 3 boating incidents, 3 injuries within those 3 accidents, and 0 fatalities. Enforcement Division issued 503 written citations, 263 warnings, and we had 25 public assists. Some notable cases for the month are 3 that we have released news releases on. Enforcement agents cited 2 commercial fishermen in Plaquemines Parish for skimming for closed season. Additionally, the vessel's captain was arrested for operating or driving a vessel while impaired, obstruction of justice, and operating a vessel without navigation lights. Agents were patrolling Oak River when they observed a shrimping vessel actively skimming for shrimp in closed waters without navigation lights. Agents boarded the vessel and noticed the captain was showing signs of impairment. Agents determined that the captain was impaired, and he admitted to the agents of throwing incriminating evidence overboard. Agents seized 1,246 pounds of shrimp and sold them to the highest bidder. Agents also seized 2 skimmer nets due to the violations. A Buras man was cited in Plaquemines Parish for failing to comply with Pompano permit regulations. Agents were patrolling the Brenton Sound area when they observed the subject setting a strike net near Curlew Island. Upon further investigations, agents documented that the subject was in violation of the depth regulations for Pompano strike nets. Agents seized 173 pounds of Pompano and sold them to the highest bidder. Last, enforcement agents arrested 10 individuals for operating or driving a vessel while impaired in Livingston Parish. Agents were scheduled to patrol the Blind River and the Meat River Diversion Canal for a large outdoor event only accessible by boat. On August 5th, 7 subjects were arrested and 3 were arrested the following day. Louisiana DWI on the water carries the same penalties and fines as a road and includes jail time, fines, loss of driving, and boating privileges. Anyone cited for DWI on the water or on the road will lose his or her driver's license and boating privileges for a specific time ordered by the judge. Each offense of operating a vehicle or vessel while intoxicated counts towards the total number of DWI crimes, whether they happened on the water or the road. This concludes the enforcement report.
Any questions? Brandon?
One comment, I noticed from last year to this year, we're doing much better on fatalities. I know
Yeah.
this is a year to date, but for 2022, we had 25, and right now we're at 7.
Yes, sir. Knock
It's-
on wood.
Yeah. Hopefully we can get through the fall and duck season without any issues, but have y'all noticed any better trends with cooperation and following voter safety?
Yes, sir. So one of the biggest contributing factors to that, unfortunately, it just some years are up, some years are down. We had a trend there for 5 years where we were on a steady incline. Usually you have that steady decline, but this year we're fortunate. And we can attribute that. We feel we attribute that to the amount of hours we're putting out there to educate and patrol the waterways of the state. And people are seeing us in there. With the DWI enforcements, as you can see over the last year, we've given you some pretty impressive numbers when it comes to DWI enforcement. and they know we're out there, and, being that presence goes a long way
Certainly.
when it comes to fatality.
Keep up the good work.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
Major Quinn. All right. Moving on, announcement by the Wildlife and Fisheries Foundation of their 2023 Wild Night fundraiser. Gabe Griffin is going to give that presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Gabe Giffen with Wildlife and Fisheries Foundation. First off, thank you guys for the work you do. Typically, I tune in virtually, and I've seen you guys going late into the afternoon this year. So I'm going to be brief. What we're here to do is formally invite you to our Wild Night event, which I'll get to in just a minute. But also, I just want to take a moment to reintroduce ourselves to our commissioners. I know we always have a revolving door of folks coming in and out. So sometimes you get someone and they go, I didn't even know we had a foundation. So the foundation here at the department, or rather our foundation, Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries Foundation, supports the department. It was created in '95. I see Mr. Kel McInnes is in our audience. It was under his leadership starting in 1995. And here we are in 2023 with quite the foundation. I keep saying agency, as a lot of you know, I spent a lot of time working for our agency before coming to our foundation. So our mission is really to work in concert with this department. It's about the current and future generations and bringing people to the outdoors. And so we do that. The main way we do that is through dedicated projects and funds. We have a few listed here. These are some of our dedicated funds. So if somebody comes to us and they say, I care greatly about a certain initiative here in Louisiana, I want to dedicate my money to just the black bear program or the whooping cranes, we allow them to do just that. But if you look through that list, some of the other ones that I really like to focus on are our outreach programs, getting kids involved in the outdoors. We've got Becoming an Outdoors Woman, of course, trying to bring all kinds of different people into the outdoors as well. And then lastly down there, I put the LWF Roundtable because that's one of our newer initiatives. I know Brian's in here somewhere, and I'm not going to steal your thunder talking about Roundtable because that is one of his brainchild ideas, but we support the department in Roundtable, which is the same day this year as our Wild Night event. So October 12th this year is a big day for Wildlife and Fisheries and for our foundation as well. We will be having the Roundtable during the day. I encourage everyone to come. It's a great day to learn in depth about all the different things the department does. There's a new lineup every year, this being our second year. We've got a whole litany of activities for you to spend and discuss time over there at the Crown Plaza Hotel. And then that evening at 6 p.m., we'll be having our annual fundraiser, a Wild Night, which happens at the Live Oak Arabians off Jefferson Highway. So I mentioned Mr. Kell. He began this foundation long ago. Missy Fox is actually out with COVID. She couldn't make it here today. She's our executive director. And with that, I'm going to open the floor up to you guys. I left y'all a folder up there. It has some information about Wild Night as well as some of the other programs and things we got going on. So thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? No? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank y'all for all you do.
Yeah. All right, moving on, receive and consider resolution to impact of the Bipartisan Safety Communities Act to the Hunter Education Program. Scott Loadman, Secretary.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commission members. I'm here to present a resolution on the impacts of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act on our education program. You may be aware of it. It's been in the news, but just to give you a little bit of background, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act became law in June of 22. Language in the law prohibits the use of elementary and secondary education funds to provide any person with a dangerous weapon or training in the use of a dangerous weapon. I have read that the intent was to keep school units from spending money, education funds, on security or security officers. However, in November of 22, the U.S. Department of Education issued guidance on the act. And the guidance included wording that provided the archery programs, hunting safety programs, and any other program such as wilderness safety courses that provide training in the use of items that are technically dangerous weapons may not be funded under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act programs. And as you would understand, that impacts several of our very important programs that this agency puts out. So this resolution requests our congressional delegation to compel the Department of Education to reverse this guidance and Congress to correct the language. And with that, I would attempt to answer any questions and ask for a favorable passage.
I move the adoption of the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor by Bob, second by Brandon. Any questions before we vote on it? No questions. All in favor of the resolution, state aye. Aye. Any opposition? No opposition. No. Resolution passes.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. All right. Next, ratify the Department of Wildlife and Fisheries declaration of emergency for a burn ban and fire prohibition on the department-owned and managed lands. Cole Garrett.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I don't have to tell all of you, it's hot and dry out there, and you're all aware of the fires that have burned and continue to burn since the 1st of August. You know, as a result of these conditions, the State Fire Marshal and the Department of Ag and Forestry have issued a statewide burn ban that remains in effect today. In addition, Governor Edwards has issued a declaration of emergency through a proclamation. And with that declaration, he's ordered all departments, boards, commissions, and agencies to cooperate in the actions the state may take in furtherance of this declaration of emergency. As I mentioned, the severe drought, excessive heat, and these extremely dry conditions persist. And with dove season in effect now and teal season rapidly approaching, on September 1st, Secretary Shadowin thought it was prudent to go ahead and adopt a declaration of emergency to prevent ignition of fires of any kind on department-owned or managed property. This includes campfires, barbecue pits, even lighters or matches, in an interest in protecting people's safety and health, as well as protecting habitat, property, and fish and wildlife resources. So that declaration of emergency is in your packet. It has been signed. It is in effect. It remains in effect until your next commission meeting, which is October the 5th, I believe, unless rescinded or modified. So what I'm here asking for is the ratification of the Secretary's emergency action here by the board who promulgates rules for the agency.
I've got a question, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I certainly understand the intent and agree with it. Is it impractical to suggest that we're not going to allow them to have all of our smokies to have lighters or matches on the WMAs? And currently, are your people prepared to, when they see somebody light up, to give them a ticket?
I will say
If it's
that the
part of
rule,
ban, absolutely, yeah.
yeah, I will say that the rule specifically talks about ignition, and that would include lighters.
I was gonna say,
Just let me follow up, please. The Commissioner of Agriculture or the Governor's executive order, were they that far reaching?
My understanding of the statewide burn ban has to deal with prescribed burns and open flames. I do not have their declaration in front of me. I can certainly find that out if we want to push this down the agenda. I can certainly do that research and come back to you.
I just don't want us to be the same impractical when we develop a rule, you know, that's as important as this, but whether it's impractical from a standpoint of way too large of a percentage of the outdoor users are smokers. And I don't know that we can expect them all to switch to vaping.
Since the secretary is not here, I'll go ahead and speak for him. The idea behind the prohibition of the ignition is recognizing that flicking a cigarette onto the ground when you've got these conditions is an opportunity to start a grass fire, forest fire, et cetera. And that is something that, as I think prudent landowners and also, people who are in charge of protecting these resources, we were concerned about. So
I disagree with you, but that's why I brought up what the Secretary of the Commissioner of Agriculture and the governor had done. Because a lot of those fires are people driving down the highway flicking their cigarettes out. That's why you see so many of them start from the roadway.
correct. So while I'm asking for a ratification of the
I hate
declaration,
smoking just as bad as I do wildfire, so I don't really have a problem with it. I
Okay.
just was pointing out that we may be a little bit impractical.
understood. I think I talked over the colonel when the question was asked, were y'all prepared to enforce ignitions and cigarettes?
I mean, if that's included under this declaration, it's a commission rule violation at that point. So yeah, we've actually been working with State Fire Marshal throughout this entire event with different activities. So yeah, we would be prepared to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that if it has not been done, that at all of the places that the WMAs or campgrounds or anything that the department has anything to do with it, there are signs at the entrances that notify the people that come on to the property that smoking and or any type of fires are illegal, and in big red, so that they know that once they come on that they can't claim, well, we didn't know. So that it will help with any type of enforcement actions that are necessary, that a lot of people don't have any idea that there's a fire ban in the state. It's just, we have a group that just doesn't pay attention to any of that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Not to get overly technical in this, but it looks like the way that the language is written is it's intended to ignite. I'm not sure that would actually capture those that are smoking. My thought on that is it might be an alternate pathway to look at what is provided for in prohibition on smoking on state property or within 25 feet of state buildings, and see if maybe that can be utilized as a means to prohibit smoking on WMAs. Just a thought.
Yeah, we can certainly look at it if that's the will of the commission. I'll
Right.
right
That-
above the language you read, it prohibits the using matches, lighters, or any other device or instrument intended to ignite flames.
Right. I mean, I get that you got to have some source to ignite your cigar, this, that, and the other, but what if they already come out with it ignited? I don't think the cigarette or the cigar is intended to be used in that manner, which I think would cause an enforcement problem for our folks out there. So maybe if we look at what is provided for on state property as it relates to prohibited smoking bans and things of that nature, and within 25 feet, it might capture that smoking piece that you guys are concerned with.
I'm at a disadvantage because I don't have a copy of the resolution in my pack.
It should be right behind the resolution. You got it?
Where is it?
It was right behind the congressional resolution. It was in
The
that.
chairman gave me his.
Okay. But I just, so I'm I'm all for the ban as far as we can go with it. I mean, this only makes sense right now until we can get some rain, some water.
Yeah. You're the learned counsel, but I read it differently. I mean, it specifically says, lighters, matches,
Oh, I agree that.
which is intended to ignite flame.
I agree, but if you're talking about someone that has an open source cigarette or a cigar on a WMA, I don't think there's any intent for that thing that's already lit. And if the idea is to capture the prohibition on smoking, you're gonna have to go a little bit further than this. I agree that it stops lighters and matches, but what if you get out of your car and you're already lit? and then you flick. There was never any intent to use that cigarette or that cigar to start a fire. And I think the way that this is worded, and we all know what intent in the law means, is you gotta go out there with that intent. Look, if that's only if you're trying to capture and draw a circle around, you know, cigarettes and or cigars or any other source that has a burn to it.
Mr. Chairman, can we take, Mr. Garrett's idea, let him contact and see what his thoughts are after this discussion? Just move this
Yes.
item to the end of the agenda.
Yeah, we can do that.
All right.
Yeah, we can just move it to the end of the agenda where you can get more clarification
Okay,
on the, before we ratify it.
sounds good. Thank you.
All righty. All right, moving on, receive and consider resolution modifying the boundaries and acreage of certain property within Salvador Wildlife Management Area, and Alvin Landry, attorney, is gonna give us that. Oh, you did? Huh?
There's a very well defined. Your intent to light forest fire with a cigarette.
Can't get out of that. Joe. I'm sorry, it's not allowing me to get out of the Wildlife Fisheries Foundation PowerPoint. I don't have a cursor. Oh, there. No, on desktop. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Secretary Shadowin. Good morning. I'm Alvin Landry, attorney for the department. Today, I'm offering a proposed resolution to modify the boundary and acreage of Salvador Wildlife Management Area. This is, we're gonna be modifying it from 1,906 acres to 1,354 acres due to the erosion. This was a tract that was donated by Chevron. It's called a Cuba 1 tract. And as you can see here, that on the bottom right map, those dots are where our boundary is, and then you can see the shoreline as it actually is. This resolution is going to be removing 552 acres of water bottoms from the WMA. As noted earlier, it was caused by erosion. We're just going to be adjusting the northern boundary. You can see the crosstalk section that we're removing from the WMA. It's water bottoms now. And that'll adjust the northern boundary of the WMA to the present day Lake Catawachi shoreline. It's still gonna be 770 acres, heavily used WMA located right south of Metairie in New Orleans. So I ask that you consider and approve this proposed resolution.
Mr. Landry, we have lots of water bottoms on our WMAs. Why do we need to change the boundary on it?
On this one, it's not a water bottom that's an in holding. And we just taking it, the water surface out of the WMA through dealings with state land office. It's one thing whenever we have an inlet of the sea.
So it just reverts back to the state under the state land office?
Yes, sir. It's still actually ours, but the state land office will have it because it's not going to be in the WMA. I'm just taking the 550 acres.
We'll have fee title ownership
Yes,
but it won't be part of the WMA.
correct.
And it doesn't fit in with the management of the WMA.
Not at all.
Okay.
Any,
I just have one quick question. Maybe I missed it, but what was the reasoning for pulling this out?
It's eroded.
It's eroded.
Yes.
Okay.
It was once, land and now it's not. And our acreage is affected, by over, 550 acres that way.
And by sending it back to state lands, this just allows more access to it or
It just,
without
it
restrictions?
creates a more accurate number of the acreage of Salvador.
Gotcha. That are actually above surface.
Right.
Okay.
There'll probably be more of these type of resolutions in the future as we continue to experience, erosion in South Louisiana.
Thank you.
Al, any other questions for Alvin? I think, Al, you made the motion. Go ahead. Okay, we got a motion on the floor to adopt the resolution. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All in favor, state aye. Motion passes. So Alvin, thank you very much. Resolutions is done.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Next, we have to receive and consider notice of intent to extend the sunset for the special bait shrimp permit holders. Peyton Kegel, he's our marine biologist. He's gonna give us that presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, Commission members. Like you said, we're here to present some information on the special bait dealer's permit for you to consider a notice of intent. Little background, we talked about this in August, just to kind of go back over that again. This NOI was originally adopted and approved June of 2021. This published in the Register in November 21. The amended rule has a sunset for December of this year. I provided an update to the commission, August 2023, with some of the data that I presented showing the numbers of fishers and dealers operating in landings. We saw that there was really not much fluctuation or growth in those numbers. And the commission mentioned to come back and recommended to delay the sunset for another 3 years. As I mentioned, the previous graph I showed you here in orange and yellow, those are bait dealers that are acting under this permit. Yellow is the years that the amendment to the rule took place. And then the gray bar and the red bars, that's the actual fishers operating under the bait permit. Again, red represents the 2 years that the permit was amended. And then the blue line is your landings. So what you really see here is very slight fluctuations, no huge growth, not any major concerns with this new gear being changed, the larger gear. I did add a new graph here for everybody to be able to look at. These orange bars here, that's catch per trip for fishers. And then you have in the blue line, number of trips. So yeah, there's some fluctuation again, but we do have some very early data when you look at 2022 that may lead you to see that you're getting more catch per trip compared to the total number of trips. As you see, when you look at 2017, trips are really high, landings are low, or catch per trip is low. Same thing in 2019, 2020. But 2022, you see that catch per trip is above the number of total trips. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go if this sunset is delayed for another 3 years. So a few other things just to discuss about the regulation, just to kind of clear up. This bait dealer's permit is solely intended for the benefit of the recreation fishing sector that wants to use live bait. These bait permits are for 1 year, calendar year, January through December. To get one, you have to post $1,000 cash bond. You got to go through an inspection process, all of that. No more than 2 gallons of dead catch can be aboard the vessel when you're operating under the permit. And then operations are between sunrise and sunset. If you operate at nighttime, you must have a working VMS registered with the state. Bait operations are required to have communication with LWF before taking trips. and no sales can be taken place on the water. So the vessel cannot sail on the water. And you also must have a land-based facility to obtain this permit. So with that, I can take any questions.
Brandon, you got a question? No? Okay. All righty.
Second.
We got a motion on the floor, first and a second. I think we gotta go to public comment before we can vote on it. Is that correct, Mr. Joe? We gotta go to public comment before we can vote on it. Okay. All right, we got a couple of speakers that want to speak in the public before we vote on it, and Robert Campo is one of them. You want to come up and state your name? Oh, you good? Okay. All righty. Okay. That's it. All righty. Okay, we can vote all in favor of the motion, state aye. No opposition. Peyton, the motion's going, notice intent's gonna pass.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All righty. Next, we have receive and consider declaration of emergency to set the 2023-24 oyster season, and Robert Cabello is gonna give us that. Caparello, that's better.
Hello today. I'm Robert Caballero. I'm the new oyster program manager for the department. I'll be presenting the oyster stock assessment and moving forward for the declaration of emergency to set the season. Starting with some background information, here's the historical commercial oyster landings in Louisiana for both private leases and public sea grounds and sacks. The graph used to be in meat pounds, but at the request of the Oyster Task Force, switched to sacks for all the graphs. Here you can see the landing started in the late 90s when the new trip ticket system started. And 2020, we had our lowest ever reported landings due to the 2019 flooding event, and the 2020 pandemic affected restaurants and consumption. And 2021, we had a 78% change up to 836,247 sacks. And then in 2022, we see a 7.3% change uptake. Here, when we split the commercial landings between the private leases in light gray and the public sea grounds in black, you notice a big shift in landings between the public sea grounds and private leases over time. And 2021, we had a 99.6% of landings straight from private leases. And then with only 0.4% coming from the sea grounds. But in 2022, we had an uptake to 3.3% coming from the public grounds. Here's the map of the Louisiana coast. The white outlines are our public oyster areas that are managed by LWF. The yellow dots are all our sampling locations where our biologists collected data for the stock assessment. We performed our square meter diving in July to do our assessments. In this graph, we can see the results of the oyster stock assessments collected by LWF for the whole coast. The black bars represent seed oysters. The green line is our 20-year long-term average for seed, while gray line represents the market size oysters, and the purple line is our 20-year long-term average for market size oysters. As you can see, the public sea grounds have been in decline over recent years due to environmental and other man-made disasters. We could see the uptake in our oysters in 2023 is mainly driven by several of our recent culture plantings. You can see we had 148% uptake in seed this year from last year, 95% uptake in sack, and overall 118% in oyster resource. We're still 21% down from our long-term average. From the whole state, we're gonna break it down into our coastal study areas from east to west. We have our north of the Mr. Go as our Pontchartrain Basin, south of the Mr. Go, still Pontchartrain Basin, Black Bay area. CSA 3 is our Barataria Basin, CSA 5 and CSA 5 East and West. You have you have our Lake Shen and Felicity, and then our sister lake. Area 6 is our Vermilion Bay and Chafalaya areas, and Area 7 is our Calcasieu Lake Basin. Finally, here's a table of the results of the total seed and market size oysters per each area in barrels. If you see green, it's an increase from last year. Red is a decrease compared to last year's stock assessment. East of the river, north of Mr. Go, these numbers include the new 2022 Drum Bay Culch plants, which is roughly about 238 acres. You can see we had a 279% increase in total resource north of the Mr. Go. South of the Mr. Go, we had an uptake in sack oysters, but a 31% decrease overall. Barataria showed a 58% decrease in total resource from last year. Lake Shen and Felicity, there was no resource found. This has been the same for the last couple of years' assessments. Sister Lake is doing very well. We see that we had a 259% increase from last year. We also had recent culch planting that will be open this year. And our Lake Michon and Bay Junip, not much resource found. This 75% decrease from last year. The 45% is a 10-year long-term average due to data collection. Lake Calcasieu is doing very well. We see a 52% increase in resource on our east side, 101% increase on our west side. And then total, we see 100% increase in oysters from last year across the whole state. This is a graph showing concentrated resource across the coastline. As you can see, Calcasieu has our largest amount of market oysters across the state. And you can see most of the, in the Mississippi Sound, the seed is on our new culture plants from last year. Here's CSA 1 North. I'll report on each basin now. Starting with Lake Borgne, Mississippi Sound, still recovering after the 2019 flooding event. We had a 279% increase from last year, mostly on the 2022 Drum Bay Culch plants. Even without the culch plants, we still see a 51% increase on the rest of the natural reefs in the area. Still below the 20-year long-term average. We're recommending this area to open since the more resource than last season, and harvest levels were reasonable last year. You see most of the market resource is located up in 3 Mile Bay and the Caraco Bay Reef complexes. You can see down below in the Drum Bay Basin, we have a large seed density on our culch plants. Here's Black Bay, Bay Gardine, Lake Fortuna area. The 2023 stock assessment shows a 60% decrease in seed oysters and an 84% increase in sack from 2022. Still below the 20-year long-term average. I'll be recommending this area to open. There's more market resource than last season, and the harvest levels were low last year. Most of the resource concentrated in Lake Fortuna area, right there in the northern part of the map. Here's our Little Lake, Hackberry, and Barataria Bay area. And the area had a 58% decrease from last year. It's still below the 20-year long-term average. This area will be closed with its biannual openings. All the resource found is on the Hackberry Bay reefs. It'll still be closed this year. Here's Sister Lake. Bay Junip and Lake Michon had very little resource. It will remain closed, but Sister Lake is doing great. Had a 259% increase from 2022. Sister Lake opened for harvest in the 2021-22 season. It was open for 5 days last season due to the abundance of resources. The openings had a lot of fishing pressure, but maintaining safe levels of harvest. For the first time since 2005, Sister Lakes has exceeded its 20-year long-term average for both seed and sack oysters by 111%. With recent culch planting, the resource has bounced back. We are also expecting future culch plant in this area using the 2019 flood money that came available. With the 20-year long-term average be exceeded, I'll be recommending for a longer season that it hasn't had since 2005. As you see, this is shows the seed densities toward the middle and northern end of Sister Lake. CSA 6 is our Vermilion Bay and Chafalaya reefs. They have lots of freshwater influence from Chafalaya River. The area has an overall increase in both seed and sack size oysters, exceeding its 20-year long-term average. With the low Chafalaya River levels and the area with the nice spat set, they had a lot good growth in seed and sack. I'll be recommending to have this area open, but with the LDH closure lines, most of the area will be closed by September. I've spoken with the Department of Health. There is still opportunity to work with the Department of Health to do relays to get into this area to get the resource. Oyster fishermen just need to contact Department of Health and set up relays if they want to get in for seed or for the market harvest season. I say most of the resource is on the middle and Nickel Reef area south of Marsh Island. Even with the health line closures, you can work with Department of Health and get in there. Here's Calcasieu Lake. It's consistently shown improvements over time. East Cove shows a 52% increase in overall resource from last year. West Cove has shown 101% increase in resource from last assessment. Both East and West Cove were open for harvest all last year, maintaining sustainable harvest levels. We do manage the East and West sides separately. Calcasieu Lake has also exceeded its 20-year long-term average by 19% this year. I'll be continuing last year's recommendations with a staggered opening between East and West Coves. It seems to be doing well for this area. We expect the new Calcasieu Lake culch plant done by November of this year with 20 acres. It's being built with the Citigo oil spill mitigation money on the East Cove side. Here's most of the resource on the West Cove, but still an increase on the east side as well. And then, of course, the oysters thrive on the southern, saltier side of the lake. Here's some things that'll affect my season recommendations. First off, we have a fall recruitment. The fall recruitment is expected to look good. There's no overall 118% increase in oyster population from last year. I want to continue with that trend. Right now, we have low river levels and higher salinities across most of our oyster reefs. I'm expecting to see oyster recruitment on several reefs that have had low to no recruitment in past years, and hopefully several oyster leases for the oyster fishermen as well. Here we look to our total spat abundance by basins coming into the peak of the fall recruitment. Because this increase in recruitment, I'm proposing to push back the season in several areas to facilitate the fall spawn and spat growth. The fall spawn usually peaks in October. Another issue is affecting my recommendation is the Sister Lake closure lines coming up. The northern half of Sister Lake is expected to be closed to harvest come November. So I want to be able to open that up and allow the resource to be extracted before the closure lines happen. Here, finally, some recommendations for the 2023-24 oyster season. Department is recommending a one-day bedding season in Sister Lake and Vermilion Chafalaya Bay, filing no more than 15% of non-living material removed during the bedding loads. Then an October 10th opening for market-sized oysters in Sister Lake for a 20-day season with 30 sacks a day, only a one-day possession limit. We're recommending to open all areas east of the Mississippi River for sacking only, beginning November 13th with 30 sacks per day, 2-day possession limit. Vermilion and Chafalaya Bay will open for sacking on November 13th, 30 sacks a day, 1-day possession. West Cove and Calcasieu Lake opening October 15th with a 15 daily sack limit. And then on January 1st, we'll recommend to open the east side with a daily limit of 5 sacks per vessel. The total harvest in the lake not to surpass 15 sacks for the whole lake. And here's our map showing the openings. There's our Pontchartrain Basin. Our Barataria Basin will remain closed this season. Here you show Sister Lake will be open for this 20-day season. This is the Vermilion Atchafalaya area open. Have to work with the Department of Health. Get to relay in some of the resources if the oyster fishermen want to get in there. Finally, West Cove, Calcasieu open on October 15th, and then the east side open on January 1st. And this is just our harvest closure criteria. Anything, I'm hoping to eliminate the closing the season due to spat by pushing back the season. If we open in November, shouldn't have any issues with that. Any harvest fraction exceeds 50% available resource in the area, or 15% for Calcasieu Lake, or harvest exceeds our thresholds by the Shell budget model, or if any enforcement issues occur at an unmanageable level, or significant mortality events can also close the season. Additional regulations that we have during for the last season, we had a reporting. This year, this is just seed bedding. This is our 15%. Vessel seed bedding can't be sacking at the same time, and no sacking vessels on board, no sacks or anything while they're seed bedding. Possession limits and our Calcasieu Lake possession limits. Then we have our reporting requirements that we instituted last year. This year, we'll be shooting to move to an e-reporting electronic app that we have developed. E-reporting will require you to register and add your vessels, and then you'll be reporting the requirements. This is to get quick and efficient harvest data back to me, so that way we can manage each area and have a sustainable harvest all year. We'll still have the call-in option available. We're going to be sending out the postcards with the season and also a QRL code so that people can get to this information on our website, and they'll have tutorials and walkthroughs for it. I'll be bringing Mike Harding will come up and speak on the e-reporting app. It came out of their shop, and he has more information for y'all about that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. We have partnered with a company called Shell Catch to modify their e-reporting application to meet the reporting requirements of the upcoming public oyster seed ground activities. The application is available in both Android and Apple ecosystems. As you can see, when the user first opens the application, they will be prompted to select the country of operation and then to register an account. They'll be providing us their name, their harvester license number, and contact information to include email and phone number. The app will then prompt the user to enter in vessel information. They must enter in at least one vessel, but they can enter in multiple vessels as needed. They can enter in the vessel name, the vessel license, state and Coast Guard registry information as appropriate. At that point, the user is immediately ready to begin reporting. The home screen that you see on the far left, you simply press the blue shell button to initiate the reporting process. The date will default to the current date. The user will be able to select which vessel they are operating on that day, and then the user will select the activity they're performing that day. In this example, they're bedding, but sacking is of course available. They will then determine and enter where they are working for that day. They have a list of LDH harvest zones they can scroll through or search, or they can use an interactive map as you see on the left to select the area they're working in. And then they will enter the amount of material being removed. For this example is 20 barrels. The volume unit defaults to barrels for bedding, and for sacking it defaults to sacks. And they have the option, if they're operating in more than one zone, to continue reporting and recording the information for whatever zones they're working in. And at that point, when they click submit, the information on the right is displayed to the user. The important takeaway on that is the top information, the date stamp. some concerns have been raised about reporting remotely out of cell coverage. That date stamp is generated by the application, is not from the user, and it confirms the time and date in which that submission occurs. That information can be displayed on water if it's queried, and it will be transmitted with the actual report to us in Baton Rouge, at which time our server will automatically send a receipt by email back to the user confirming that we've received that information with the harvest information and the date stamp confirming that the reporting has occurred as expected. And the application itself is very straightforward and simple. There will be an FAQ available to answer questions. There will be how-to videos available. Robert's personal information is going to be in the application so users can contact him if they have a problem. There is an interactive capability to work with the app developer if there's an app issue. And there's also a blast capability where if Robert needs to send out a message to all users immediately, if there's a closure, whatever the need may be, that is there and functional and ready to roll. And we expect to have this prepared and ready to roll before the season opens. And with that, if you have any questions, I'll happily answer.
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to applaud the department for this and all the effort that's gone into it by all those involved within the department, because this is something that I've hoped to see happen for far before I was a commissioner here, being in the oyster business for some 45 years. I will say that I think that the app is very user-friendly, and hopefully down the line, this sort of technology can be used by hunters and recreational and commercial fishermen for everything down the line. Because as managers of resources within the state, the more information you get, the better management you'll be able to do to keep resources available for all users ongoing. And we need to protect these resources for everyone to be able to use down the line. And with that said, I want to finish with that, but go on to the oyster business and what was found with the presentation. This is the best we've seen in, close to a decade. And in my opinion, it's actually over a decade. I know what the numbers said, but I also know what I saw actually being in the business every day. And I think there was a lot of misreporting on sizes of units that were landed at the docks and things like that. We talked about that for a very long time. But it's all has to do with the high salinity and the amount of fresh water that we had experienced for so many years. And for 2 years now, we've experienced very high salinities. And so that even the crevasses that they have in the river now, on the east side of the river where the main public oyster grounds are, where we used to have 40% of all harvest that was sold in most of my career. And it never counted any of the seed that was landed, that was placed on the private oyster farms. It's very good to see this, how it's increased this year. I don't know, the only takeaway from it is because drought is not good. But when you see what can happen in a high salinity year with the natural amount of fresh water that's going through these crevasses can do to increase fisheries. And I think that's why we saw increases in crab fisheries, increases in speckled trout and shrimp, in brown shrimp the last, couple of years.
anyway, thank you very much for the report. I know that the Oyster Task Force supported this. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to, isn't that what we have to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To
To
adopt the NOI.
adopt to adopt the declaration of emergency.
Okay. We got a first and a second. We got public, public comments. Anthony Terrio wants to come up and speak. State your name and where you're from, please.
I'm Anthony Terrio. I'm a commercial fisherman in Cameron. I oyster. I actually helped run the shop last year, and we'll be running the shop again this year. There's 2 shops in Cameron. You know, and they're right. You know, there's a lot of oysters there, you know, but there's not one public reef that I can say is a good reef to fish on. You know, on the west side, we fight hook mussels every day. You know, and they say salinity will solve the problem. Well, we haven't had rain in 2 years, and the mussels are just as bad now as they were 2 years ago. You know, 15 years ago, Patrick Bank came to our town and said the only way to get marketable oysters is to work them over. Now, we're not working nothing over. You know, I've been asking George and been asking Carolina, you know, let's do something about the hook mussels. How do you get rid of them? Every person you talk to says you have to turn them over with a dredge or something. We can't dredge in Cameron. So how else to do it? You know, they're telling you about all the oysters they have there, but they're not telling you about all the hook mussels that we fight to get these oysters. I mean, it doesn't do any good to have all the oysters in the world if you don't have marketable oysters. No one wants them. We have to do something with the hook mussels. But the number does not concern our area. We have Andy that calls once a week and gets our numbers. And we carry a logbook with us. And we've never met the quota. So the number does not affect us. What it does to us, though, is when you get in at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and you got to help load a truck, you got to wait on a truck that's coming to load, you know, and we're doing all this just to be able to work. Because, I mean, you see the shrimp prices and everything. These shops are not making any money, none. So they're depending on oyster season to carry you through the year. So we do all this, and then your wife and your kids is waiting on you to take them to football practice and all this stuff. And then we still have to call this number in. You know, the number is nonsense in our area because we don't meet the quota. We didn't meet a third of the quota last year. But Andy calls once a week, gets our numbers. We carry a logbook in our boat. I mean, we're doing enough. I mean, you know, I understand in some areas that it might affect it a lot, but not our area. But the coach plant too, you know, they're talking about putting the other coach plant in. The last coach plant we had put in was $1 million coach plant. Do you know how many oysters came off of it? None, not one oyster. It was covered by mud. You can't even find a rock there now. Why? Because of the dredging in the ship channel. They dredged the ship channel. They pumped the spoil. The spoil leaked out over the oyster ground, you know, over the coach plant and covered up everything. But we can't, we asked George and them to come up with something. Let's do something with the hook mussels. Well, there's no money. You'll have to do it for free. So we're willing to do it for free. So they come up with a special use permit you're going to have to get. Okay, well, let's do that. So we talked to the port board. We had Kim Monte. She's on the port board. She's willing to, I'll find you some money so you can go out there and do something with these hook mussels. Since they can build $1 million coach plant, but we can't dedicate $100,000 or whatever for the fishermen to go out there and work on the public reefs that we have. Because we have none that you can say is just great oysters you can go fish on. There is areas that they're not bad. Don't get me wrong. But majority of the time, you're fishing on hook mussels every day. I mean, but is there oysters? Yes, sir. There's plenty. I mean, there's not a day that I didn't catch my oyster. But was it taking till 5 o'clock in the afternoon? Yes, sir. Was it because the oysters were there? No, sir. It was because it was that much cleaning.
All right. Any comment? Okay.
Let me, Patrick can speak. Yeah, I understand the problem with the hook mussels. I wish that scraping over them would do it. But my experience has been that even using scrapers, because that's what we call them. We don't call them dredges anymore. The law book changed a number of years ago, and it's not a dredge, it's a scraper. It does not, when the conditions are there for those hook mussels to thrive, they do. And I'm telling you, I have grounds that never had hook mussels. And two of the big grounds that we had that were in American Bay and in Lake Machai that we never experienced hook mussels. When they came, and those things never left until last year, and only on part of those areas. It wasn't all of the whole ground. And I wish that scraping them would be able to do something, but that's not been the experience. It has way too much to do with just water quality. And what we've done as a state over the last 25 years, changing the waterworks all over the place. That's what we're experiencing now, is the effect of changing the waterworks. But I do understand what you're talking about, and I wish there was more that we could do as a department or as an industry to help make it better. Those public oyster resources and not have that hook mussel problem. But I just don't see where we're going to be able to do it from my experience over the last 45 years. Thank you.
Well,
Mr.
when we
Chairman.
pulled the scrapers there, we sure cleaned them up. I mean, when we were pulling the scrapers there, we cleaned the mussels up. We wasn't fighting a quarter of the mussels we fight now. I mean, and we had George talking to let's, dedicate an area and try it. We have to do something, but we were going to have to do it at our own expense. Now we can come in and put in $1 million coach plant that hope it works or hope the dredge doesn't, they dredge out the channel and hope the spoil don't end up on them again. But we can't dedicate, $100,000 or $200,000 to try to do something with this. I mean, that was $1 million coach plant they put. Not one oyster came off of it. You know why? Because the spoil and the tugboats going right over the top of it. I mean, that wasn't our fault. I mean, it's one thing when you go out there and you're catching up everything and you blame it on a fisherman, but it's another when it's a mistake by the department or by, them not protecting, the coach plant better than they did. I mean, and let's say it's not going to happen again.
Just to respond to that, I wish that we could control Mother Nature, because it's a lot of this is Mother Nature. I'm going to go back in history a little bit because I'm old, and I think it's important to go ahead and just bring up the facts of what it was. I never bought very many oysters from over in Cameron, but I got to see them a lot, and I'm dating back to the late 70s and early 80s, all through the 80s, all through the 90s. There was not limits on how many sacks could be made. There was never a mini sack sold there. It was only sacks. The main guy that sold them was a guy by the name of Roosevelt Fountain, and Schoolboy, as he was known as his nickname. He would load anywhere from 3 to 5 trailer loads of oysters a night. That we're talking 400 sacks per trailer load that would go out. And the oysters did not have mussels on. And that's why I brought up the fact about the waterworks.
that's
what we've
Calcasieu
done,
Lake, though.
how
You're-
we've changed over, that was Calcasieu Lake. It was
The
in-
east
in
side, the
it
east side. We
was
didn't
east. A
fish
lot
the
of it-
west side back then.
A lot of it was East Cove
Yes.
at the time, but we were dealing with closures because it was closed a lot, you know? So I'm just saying, water conditions change. I wish that it didn't happen. But, you know, man has done a lot to change that system over in the Calcasieu region. And just as it has on the east side of the river. And I don't want the department or this commission to be blamed for something that we had nothing to do with. We've tried to bring back oysters, and there's so many more other factors that happen that we have no control over, like the siltation and all. And I wish that we did, because I would like for it to be when there was, 3 to 5 trail loads coming out of Cameron, because it helped the oyster population and the prices to be more affordable for consumers, and anyway, I've spoken way too much, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
So are you saying that the special use permit and everything is not gonna come into effect now?
Patrick?
Well, Mr. Terry brings up a good point about the hook mussels, and maybe there are some things that we can do by working with the fishermen in that area. And so I'm going to talk to the head of marine fisheries, Chris Shebley, as well as head oyster biologist, Robert Caballero, to explore something that we may be able to do. Just as Al talked about some history, I can remember early in my career, us having a tremendous hook mussel problem east of the river on the public grounds. Fishermen used to tell me, all we got over here, Patrick, are cannonballs. And they would bring up an oyster that was completely covered in hook mussels. You couldn't even see any of the shell of the oyster. And so it does happen. And Commissioner Sincere is correct. When the conditions are right, there's really almost nothing you can do. But Mr. Terry is also partly right as well. We have seen some areas that had a lot of heavy harvest by the industry that the problems didn't seem to be as bad, and the mussels didn't go away. There were still mussel problems, but they weren't quite as bad as they were. So there may be some things we can do by working with the industry. And so I'm going to talk to Chris and Robert about something that we may be able to put together. So we'll look into that, Mr. Terrio.
Well, I'm just saying, instead of so much of a coach plant that's $1 million, if we invest a little bit of money, wanting us to go out there for free. No one wants to work for free. I'm not saying we got to be a fortune, but no one wants to work for free. Thank you.
Joe?
Mr. Banks, I don't want to confess my ignorance, so would you explain to Commissioner Brister what a hook mussel is?
Yeah, a hook mussel is just another bivalve out in Mother Nature, and it
attaches to the oyster.
It attaches to the oyster using a mechanism called byssal threads, which are just little hair-like structures, and then that'll attach to really anything hard in the environment. And just another bivalve out there. There's nothing about them that's food quality. They are a type of food for certain types of crabs, and even black drum will eat them as well. But they're a much smaller organism than an oyster, but it's just another competitor out there for space and filter feeding organisms.
Any other questions? All right, we need a motion. Yeah, we have the motion in a second. Okay, I'll ask for a vote on the motion. All in favor, state aye. Any opposition? No opposition. The motion's gonna pass on the oyster declaration. We thank you. Next, we have announced proposed 2024 commission meeting dates. And I think Miss Susan has it all on the 4th of it's the first Thursday of every month, and yeah, on July's date, we need to possibly change it to the 3rd or the 2nd. Do we want to vote on it now or wait? We,
I don't
I-
think
I-
it's an action
Colt, do we
item.
have to vote on it today?
In the past, we have not. I think this is kind of a new thing that we've done just to make sure people are aware of when our meetings are. Obviously, historically, it's the first Thursday of the month. But I don't think there's anything that requires you to vote on it today. All we have to do is make sure that we give 72 hours notice before any meeting.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, we'll just go ahead and kick the can down the road, I guess. You know, until, unless somebody has any questions. All right, no. Yeah,
Again, this is more for a public notice. Our formal announcement is when we post the meetings in accordance with the open meetings law. So yes, next meeting would still be timely, as would November, as would December.
all right. We'll just do it next meeting, Miss Susan. Just add it on there. We'll adopt it then. All right. Next code, you need to come up again and
All right, I'll take a second crack at this apple. So the previous discussion was wondering whether or not this burn ban was going to include cigarettes, cigars, matches, lighters, et cetera. I did check what the State Fire Marshal released as their burn ban, and it simply prevents all private burning of any kind. That is the extent of their declaration of emergency. They did release a press release yesterday to clarify, and what their clarification, again, this is not their declaration of emergency, this is a press release. It says this includes open flames and fire pits, campfires, barrels, bonfires, burn piles, and open burning of any kind. They went on to say that outdoor cooking is allowed on a flame-resistant surface and with some water source or fire extinguisher nearby. So I guess to carry this discussion a little further, when the secretary took action, it was as a landowner or manager of property. The state fire marshal's burn ban is statewide. It's on your private property, it's in your yard, it's at your camp, it's everywhere. This is either wildlife and fisheries property or managed property. So I think that you have the ability to go a little bit further in protection of the resources as well as the property than the statewide burn ban does. But that is how the state fire marshal is interpreting their burn ban that's currently in place.
do you have a question?
This would be in effect until the secretary revokes it?
The current declaration of emergency is in effect until it's rescinded or modified. So it is current, it is active, it is set to expire your next October meeting, unless the secretary rescinds or modifies it thereafter. If there's an action y'all would like to take today to modify the way it is, if you decide, hey, we understand people smoke and we want to allow cigarettes out there, I think that's something y'all can certainly take that action, and we'll just do a new declaration of emergency to modify it based on whatever action you take. Just wanted to reiterate the purpose of the secretary, including matches, lighters, in there was understanding that cigarettes could be a potential source for one of these fires.
Secretary's not here, is he?
No, sir.
I really believe that we ought to be more in conformity with the statewide order. And this isn't 100% correct, but most of our property, I think I'm gonna be correct in this statement, is swamp land, bottomland woods, which are not as prone to burning as what we see in the piney woods, where those wildfires are occurring in southwest Louisiana and a little bit in north Louisiana. So I would like for us to, delete barbecue grills or put gas grills if we'd feel more comfortable with that, but strike out the matches and lighters. I just think that's probably impractical and gonna cause a lot of consternation when an agent goes to write somebody up that's, steps out of a vehicle with and lights a cigarette.
Any other questions?
I will say the executive order that the governor's office put out is that the state agencies and boards should cooperate in any action that the state takes in furtherance of the declaration. So yes, I think to the extent that outdoor cooking is going to be allowed, it would be appropriate for us to mirror what the state fire marshal. Correct.
Al?
Thank you. Is there any way that we can adopt this with just an amendment that would mimic the current fire marshal's declaration as well as the Commission of Agriculture, and also have it go along with the same timing as what time they pull that ban?
Yes.
Could we do that just in general without the exact language?
Yes.
And with the intent that we're going to mimic that
Yes,
language?
you could conceptually make a motion that we adopt the same restrictions that the state fire marshal and the Department of Ag and Forestry has done, and that we, I believe they're reevaluating it weekly, and that we adopt the same, and then should they remove the ban, we modify ours to do the same.
With that, I'd like to make that amendment, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
We got amended by Al, second by Joe, to amend the declaration of emergency. So I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, state aye. Aye. Motion passes. So
Thank you for the
cool.
second opportunity.
It saves everybody right there.
No, sir, I
No.
believe your motion was to adopt it as
To-
amended. Yep.
We'll adopt it like it is.
Thank you.
All righty, thanks, Cole. Next, we have public comments, and we have several speakers that want to come up, and I'm gonna start off with Ty Hibbs.
How y'all doing? Thanks for having me up here as always. I just wanted to start off saying, it's been a long, hot summer. We've been feeling it on the water every day. It's definitely, just persuaded some of our days of fishing. Definitely been getting off the water a lot earlier. But red fishing's definitely not been what it should be this past summer. And y'all know that, y'all have heard that. And I'm just wanted to come up here and let y'all know, appreciate what y'all are doing with the redfish notice of intent right now. Just wanted to let you know there's a lot of people in here, a lot of people you're going to be seeing a whole lot of the next couple months in support of it. And we appreciate, what y'all are doing. Y'all are doing everything you can for it. And just wanted to let you know when hopefully we could take it down to that Capitol building, and we'll be right there with you, and just want to keep letting you know that we're in support of y'all and we appreciate what you're doing and all. And this is kind of one of the biggest things that is happening in our lifetime, and definitely in the lifetime of redfish down here. So just we'll be right there with you. Let us know anything that you could do in support of helping y'all with this. And we'll look forward to seeing y'all at the next one. As I always leave y'all, You know, Louisiana has always been known as the redfish capital of the world for a reason. And I really don't ever want to see the day it becomes less. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks. Next, we have Dave Best.
Thanks for having us again. Dave Best, I live in New Orleans. I just want to say thanks to you guys. I get a chance to tell you thanks for adopting a new NOI for redfish. I know redfish was not on the agenda, but I had the opportunity to come today and just say thanks for everything you guys are doing. The biggest concern I have is not getting this thing railroaded like other NOIs have got railroaded in the past. So I'm trying to find out what is the best way for us to know. And I know a meeting may happen at the last minute, which a lot of us didn't know about last time on the trout, and we weren't able to attend that. Trying to find out what is the best way to know when there'll be a meeting, like with the oversight committee or something like that, that we can attend and not just get this thing pushed off like it's happened before. I just don't know the answer to that. So that's why I came. So.
Colt, you can answer that.
So the oversight committee will have 30 days to exercise oversight once the summary report is submitted to them. Anytime during that 30 days, they can call an oversight hearing. I think they're only limited to 24 hours notice. But to the extent that we get notice, we can certainly work through our press release folks and get that information out as soon as we get it.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
sir.
Thank you. So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for, like I said, for all you're doing. Thanks for the biologists for everything they've done. And I want to say, thanks for you guys for catching us after the meetings were over, spending some time chatting with us. You know, I'm a very concerned conservationist, citizen, father who's, again, kids ask me, Dad, what happened to this fishery? It's not the same. They're 11 and 16. So they've seen it decline in the past few years. Again, like Ty said, some of the past few months, red fishing has been tough. You know, sight fishing, not seeing as many fish as we usually do. I think there's a lot of things that lead to that, but just want you guys to know that as best we can, and the people that I know have your interest of the new NOI at heart, want to be there to help support in any way we can. We just have to know as charter fishermen, it's hard to, 24-hour notice. It's hard to tell your client, but I've already warned all my clients, like, look, if they call and say the meeting tomorrow and you're scheduled to fish, then sorry, but I'm not fishing. I'll be in Baton Rouge or wherever I need to be. So thanks again. Also, thanks for having I guess this is the department. Thanks for having the National Day of Hunting and Fishing that I intend on bringing my kids to. Just thanks for all that y'all do, whether it's shrimp for these guys, like Campos, like so many, just thanks for all that you guys do in supporting all the outdoors. And so thank you.
On the podium real quick. Yeah, Mr. Joe.
No,
and
I just
Kevin.
wanted to thank you for your comments and the previous speaker for y'all's understanding of what we're trying to accomplish, and also having an understanding that it takes y'all's help when these things come up as the legislature. They seem to, and it's understandable that they listen to the vocal few, and if you're guiding or if you're at home, well, they don't hear from you.
Right,
So
for sure.
they don't think that they don't get that input.
Right. Okay.
All right, but thank you. I would like to ask Cole or Undersecretary Banks, Jason's not here. He's probably doing centimeters on his slide rule or something. But have we gotten any input back from anyone on this?
As I appreciate it, we still have an open public comment period right now. So I feel quite certain we've gotten some input coming in.
Have we had the public hearing on redfish and speckled trout yet?
No, the speckled trout potpourri that you all passed set for a public hearing in this room on September the 21st at 10 a.m. We would not normally hold a public hearing on the redfish unless we were specifically requested to hold one. What we're doing right now for the redfish NOI is through that NOI, it directs people to send public comments directly to Jason. And so that's what he's compiling at this point. And it'll be up to the chairman and the secretary, whether they want us to bring those public comments back for y'all to hear them or just publicly or just pass them on to you all before we send that report to the legislature. Maybe Cole can add something if I said something incorrect.
Oh,
Are we talking about the redfish NOI? Okay. To the best of my recollection, we would have those comments collected prior to your October meeting. As Patrick mentioned, the opportunity would be there for y'all to set it as an agenda item if you sought to modify it based on those or not. If you fail to set it as an agenda item, the secretary has been empowered to send that to oversight. Without having the NOI in front of me and knowing exactly when the public comment period ends, unfortunately, I can't give you a tighter time frame than that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I have a question.
Okay, Andy,
for
go
Cole.
ahead.
And this is probably might be for the public relations people, but is there any way that the general public can sign up, give their email address and they get the information that we get immediately, that they get the same information? Because that would, if that would be something that charter boat captain people could do or whoever,
So we do have a public sign up where you can receive every press release that goes out and all of that. I will say information provided to the commission for you to do your job as a policymaking board
No, I
is
mean,
not
the
made
public
public.
stuff. but
Yes, sir.
that anybody can
Oh, yes, sir.
request or go online and,
Yep.
and submit their name. So that's one thing they could do in order to get the same information, public information that we're.
Correct. When you sign up for that, you receive every press release that goes out and everything that's made public it goes directly to your email.
Then I might suggest that there be a series of emails just reporting the status of that NOI or the redfish and the trout too, as it progresses through those stages, maybe have that in the emails, and that way these folks can sign up and they can see what we're seeing when it comes to the public stuff.
Great idea.
Redfish ends at noon on Thursday, October the 5th, which is the date of your next meeting.
So public comment ends on the 5th, then we have a period of time where Jason will compile what the comments are, develop the summary report. Y'all will receive all of that. You will then have an opportunity in your November meeting to have it as an agenda item, make any modifications. Failure to do that would then result in us sending the summary report to the legislature.
Mr. Joe.
So, Cole, do we have to wait? Can we go ahead and send it to the legislature at the end of the public comment period to where we also have their input too before the November meeting?
No, sir. So the way it works is what you send to the legislature is your intent to whatever you send to them is what you intend to have as a final rule. And so you can't promulgate a final rule prior to 90 days from the original adoption of the notice of intent. And so the last 30 days, we always reserve for legislative oversight. So you can't have both trains heading on the track where you're still making modifications and changes and it's there for their final approval. So whatever y'all intend to do to promulgate as a final rule is what gets sent to them. Then they have 30 days to act upon it.
So did I understand your statement? It can't go to the legislative oversight until 90 days after the original NOI was adopted?
60 days. And then we count the last 30 days that they have for oversight as the final 30 of the 90.
Okay, so October 5th is how many days from when it was originally promulgated?
We usually aim for about 40 or 45 days of public comment and then give ourselves about 15 days to do the summary report, provide y'all with the information and all of that. I don't know exactly.
So could you send it to them on the, well, I guess would be right at the November meeting when the 60 days was up?
You'd
Am I
be right
thinking
around there. Yes, sir.
So once she goes to the November meeting, then they got 30 days to promulgate it. Or send it back to the, so what I'm trying to figure out is what's the soonest could we get it into law? Patrick,
You're
anybody?
probably looking at December 20th to be finally promulgated in the state register at the earliest.
All right, Patrick?
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's probably, if all goes according to plan, that's when it would probably be published in the register, if it makes it through oversight and all of that stuff. I wanted to make a mention about you all hearing public comments. If you wanted to hear, you all can ask for an agenda item at any time. You can ask for a summary of our public comments at any time. If you wanted us to provide a summary of those public comments that we had gotten to date, we could do that at the October meeting. Just recognize that there would still be a portion of that date, October 5th, that we would still be required by law to accept some more public comments, but we could certainly come to you all and tell you what we have heard up until that day. So just wanted to let you all know that.
Let me make that request in for the
Yeah,
October
I
meeting.
was gonna say that. Someone needs to make that request. That way we can keep this ball rolling. All right, next on public comment is Doug Daig.
Hi, thank you. I'm Doug Daigle. I'm the coordinator of the Louisiana Hypoxia Working Group. And I had had a two-part request to make. I forwarded you a copy of a resolution the commission passed back in 2017 supporting the Gulf Hypoxia Action Plan. So I wanted to request at the next meeting, if you can, to you consider reaffirming that. And I'm happy to provide any information. There's a variety of folks who can do that, but I'm happy to provide any information you might need about that. And I also included a copy of a memo that I presented with remarks to the commission in 2021. And there was an item on that I wanted to ask if you all would maybe make a request for information on, which is that under the Natural Resources Damage Assessment, or NERDA settlement from the BP disaster, the state received $20 million to apply to reducing non-point source pollution to the Gulf, which is nitrogen and phosphorus. That's what fuels the Gulf hypoxic zone. So in 2018, about half of that, not quite half, $9 million was allocated. But since then, about $10.5 million has just been sitting there and nothing's been done with it. The department has one of the members on the trustee implementation group, who are the ones who decide. And I've been trying to find out why the money hasn't been allocated for anything. It seems to me the most obvious purpose would be to try to do something to help reduce the hypoxic zone. But anyway, that's a second request. If you all could maybe request the department member on the trustee implementation group to, provide that information, because they've been to the meetings. I know that at the last meeting they held a couple of months ago, the issue wasn't discussed. So, but the first straightforward request would be ahead of your next meeting to see if you would consider reaffirming that prior resolution.
So right now you asking us to request where that funding is and where's it going?
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's there. Nothing's been done with it. So since the department is one of the members of that group, they do have I don't remember the gentleman's name, but he might be able to tell us something.
Patrick, can you clarify that?
Yeah,
maybe?
we do have some members that sit on some of the working groups of that. CPRA is our official state member on the trustee council, but on some of the working groups, we do have some department representatives. We have one from fisheries and one from wildlife. I can sit with both of those gentlemen and try to find out what's going on with the water quality pot of money and see. And then certainly, Mr. Daigle, if you have some ideas on a project on how to utilize that money, a lot of times those monies in those pots are not used simply because there is no current project proposal in front of the working group. And that may be why they didn't even discuss it at the last meeting, but we can look into that for you, commissioners.
I'm gonna have one question. You might not be able, you might answer it, you're not. why is the dead zone in the Gulf so smaller this year than it's ever been?
It fluctuates every year. This year, the river level was low. And so the nitrogen and phosphorus load was smaller because the Mississippi's been in a drought. So that was the main reason, why this year it was lower. It fluctuates year to year. If you look at the trend over time, that's what you want to look at when we're trying to reduce it. Yeah.
All right. I figured that's what it was
Mhm.
Mississippi River discharge, with it and, we sitting at the world's largest cesspool. So it's kind of hard to clean up when you're on the bottom of the bucket,
Right.
right there. So, any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Anybody else has any other public comment? We don't have any other speakers. If not, I'll ask for adjournment.
So moved.
So move. All right, we adjourn. Thank everyone for coming and look forward to seeing y'all next month.